Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Winning Agenda's Sorcery Beta Preconstructed Avatar Showdown series. My name is Jesse Muehlman-Marshall. This time we're here with the Flamecaller. So the Flamecaller, which you can see here, is the Fire Preconstructed Deck avatar from Beta. It's great to see another Fire avatar added to the game. I've been really excited to try out a lot of these Fire minions in something a bit different. I'm going to talk through how the Flamecaller deck that I've built here for the Preconstructed Showdown functions, but what Haine and I have tried to do, which you'll see in the game videos that we posted. We both got one of the Preconstructed Deck sets, which you can pick up at your local game store. It's got all four of the elements covered, so you get the Wave Shaper, which I've got the deck tech and the game for on the channel, gameplay video. The Flamecaller, which is this deck tech here today that we're doing. We've got the Spark Mage and the Geomancer, which are the two that Haine played in the respective matches as well. So you can check out Haine's deck techs at Wizard's Den for his two decks. And we've got the Flamecaller here today, and then we've got the Wave Shaper up on the channel as well. So there's a bevy of content that you can check out about these pre-constructed avatars that came out in beta. And hopefully we've got you covered for how you can spice up these decks a little bit. Of course, the precons are fun in and of themselves, but what we're aiming to do here is show you how you can spice them up a bit and potentially compete at your local game store or just around your kitchen table with some of the best decks in the format. So in that vein, what we're going to do first, we'd have a look at the cards from the pre-constructed deck that I've kept in for my deck list. So when you pick up your Flamecaller deck, you're of course going to get one copy of the avatar, and then you're also going to get a copy of each of these spells that I've shown here, and of course the sites as well. Then in terms of the spells, you've got the Preconstructed Cavalry, Clamor of Harpies, Quarrelsome Kobolds, Colicky Dragonettes across the top, some really important minions in the deck, as well as the Sacred Scarabs, and then we've got 2 copies of Firebolts and a copy of Minor Explosion as well. So a really good start on the spells in the deck, and now what I'm going to do is take you through the remainder of the spells that I've added to the deck, and then of course the remainder of the sites as well, for the deck that I played in the gameplay video against Haine on the channel. So what you can see here is the deck's pretty slimline. So I've got this laid out in mana cost order. I've put together the 1 and the 2 cost spells a little bit here just for space, but these are all the things that cost 1 and 2. Then we've got the 3 Europes here, and then the 4 drops and the 4 cost spells here. So we cap out at 4, nothing more than 4 in this deck. It's pretty low to the ground. We are probably a little bit top heavy in terms of the number of 4s that we've got, but we are helped a little bit by the fact that the Gaia Hippogriffs and the Preconstructed Cavalry both have charge, which means that they're both going to be able to impact the board as soon as they land. So it's not so much of an issue having them at 4. Although if I was going to redesign the deck, I'd probably try and get in a couple more 3 drops and 2 drops and cut a couple of those 4s. But anyway, let's dive into what all the cards actually do. So as with the Wave Shaper deck, which you'll find in the channel as well, we've got 3 pieces of acceleration: the Philosopher's Stone, the Amethyst Core, and the Ruby Core, all of which effectively provide us with 1 additional mana on subsequent turns. So we get them down on turn 1, then turn 2 onwards, they're giving us at least 1 additional mana. So Ruby Core and Amethyst Core give us a threshold and a mana. Philosopher's Stone gives us just mana discount, but it can be used for the first spell of each element that we cast each turn. So it can potentially give us 2 mana on turns where we play a air spell and a fire spell in the same turn. So all of those are our little acceleration pieces that we've got there, hoping to get those down early in the game. Then we've got a couple of other cheap non-minion spells here. So we've got 3 copies of Firebolt. 2 of these are the ones from the actual beta pre-constructed deck, as I showed you a moment ago. You can see they've got slightly different coloring, a little bit darker, a little bit more saturation, which is kind of cool. So we've got that little beta set symbol there as well, in between the art beta, Jeff Easley there this time instead of alpha. So we've got 3 copies of Firebolts. We've got a copy of Jihad, which is you may summon fire minions to affected sites, and allied fire minions occupying affected sites have +1 power. So early on in the game, you can actually put this on your opponent's side of the board. You play it at the intersection of 4 sites, any 4 sites on the board, and then you can actually summon fire minions to your opponent's side of the board, and you can also give a little buff to your minions as well. So Jihad, a very powerful unique. And then we've got the Summoning Sphere, which fulfills a similar role. It lets us summon minions to our opponent's side of the board, which particularly with Colicky Dragonettes and Quarrelsome Kobolds, our 3 drops, can be a pretty powerful thing to do. So we'll take a quick look at what they do. But it also functions very well with some of our earlier plays. So Sacred Scarabs, Vile Imp. I run through all the cards that benefit from being played or having the capacity to be played on our opponent's side of the board. Of course, any minion can be helpful to play on your opponent's side of the board when you've got them at death's door, because it means that you can attack them with it. So any of our charge minions in particular can benefit from that if we are ahead and we're looking to close out the game. But these guys all benefit a little bit more from the Jihad and the Summoning Sphere than others. So Quarrelsome Kobolds is a 3-cost 2-power minion that says at the end of your turn, it can strike themselves or it has to strike either itself or another target adjacent unit. So that means if your opponent is at death's door, or even if you're kind of putting your foot on the accelerator and trying to get them down to 0, being able to play a Quarrelsome Kobolds right alongside their avatar means you get to do 2 damage straight away at the end of your turn, and they can't defend against it, they can't block it, and the Kobolds pretty much just gets to hit through any number of defenders, which is pretty cool with that ability. Then we've got the Colicky Dragonets. At the end of your turn, Colicky Dragonets shoot a projectile. It deals 1 damage. Similar thing, if you plonk this down on the site where their avatar is, then they really can't avoid being hit by that projectile at the end of your turn. So it's a similar way to finish people off if they're at death's door in a way that's really hard for them to avoid, but also just get in some other damage or kill some minions that are being pesky on their side of the board as well. Then we've got Sacred Scarabs, which of course has that Deathrite ability. Each unit here takes 3 damage. And what that can do is if you play it on top of their avatar, they have to move away basically, or they risk dying to the Sacred Scarabs exploding when they are killed. Then we've got the Vile Imp, which deals 2 damage to target adjacent units. So you can see with the Vile Imp, Quarrelsome Kobolds, and Colicky Dragonets, they all have this ability to deal damage on your turn in a way that's not defendable. All they need to be is close, as close as possible to the target. So that means if you can get them right up close to the avatar, then you can be dealing damage to your opponent as quickly as possible in a way that's really hard for them to defend. So the Highland Falconer is also a nice little toolbox that can let us fetch either the Pallibury Bats or the Sacred Scarabs for a little bit of card advantage and tutoring. So it's a 2-cost 1-power minion that says, Genesis, you may search your hand and spellbook, which is really hand or spellbook, for a beast with airborne and mana cost 2 or less and summon it here. So summon means you don't have to pay for it, shuffle if needed. So you can search for and summon a Pallibury Bats or a Sacred Scarabs wherever you play your Highland Falconer, and you can do so for free, and you basically get the card for free as well. So you get both, for 2 mana, you get both the Falconer and one of these 2, which is pretty cool. So either you get a 2-power airborne minion with burrowing, or you get a 1-power airborne minion with that very impressive Deathrite ability that can also tangle with some big airborne minions on the other side of the board, things like Dapper or Vampire, if they happen to be playing those. So that little toolbox is helpful. Then we've got, and that's what I should say, one of the reasons that we're playing air. Then we've got 4 copies of Grapple Shot, which is, of course, one of the most powerful finishers and powerful aggressive spells in the game. 3 cost, an ally shoots a projectile. If it hits a unit, the ally is dragged to that other unit's location and it can strike the hit unit. So it's a way for you to basically get your minions dealing an additional free attack on a turn, but it also is an attack that can't be defended because it's a strike rather than attack. So that is basically an undefendable one-way attack where they don't get to hit you back. And it's a good way to finish the game and close things out if your opponent's trying to run away from you. So this deck's got heaps of ways to close out the game. We've seen, the Summoning Sphere and the Jihad with things like Vile Imp and Colicky Dragonets and Quarrelsome Kobolds can deal damage that's undefendable on your opponent's side of the board. We've then got, a few burn spells like Minor Explosion. We've got the Firebolts that we had a look at earlier. So Minor Explosion, 3 damage to each unit at target location up to 2 steps away. So they do have to be reasonably proximate to your Flamecaller to get this happening, but it just is another option for how you can close out the game. Then, of course, we've got the Flamecaller's ability itself. Tap, banish all your dead fire minions, shoot a projectile, deals damage equal to the sum of their fire threshold. So we haven't, and one thing that I've seen people do a little bit with Flamecaller is lean really heavily into a lot of the double and triple threshold fire minions. I don't really think you need to do that. This ability, it can be cool if you can double up and really go for some big fireballs off your Flamecaller. But what it allows you to do is just get that little bit of extra chip damage in here and there, or take out a couple of minions just by tapping your avatar throughout the course of the game, just if you build up a few things in your cemetery by playing a few cards. And I think if you just play the best fire minions and rely on your deck to do most of the work, the Flamecaller can just give you that little bit of extra boost or that card or two of card advantage at the right moment, but by taking out opposing minions, or that really key projectile that can deal the death blow if need be as well. So it's just a cool threat. It's quite versatile, and I don't think you need to build too hard around it. I think just having fire minions in your deck is going to get enough out of this card because the ability is just good enough. Then at the top end, it's worth mentioning, because it was a bit of a, if you've watched the video, I won't spoil things for you if you haven't yet, of me playing this deck against Haine's Geomancer deck, but Clamor of Harpies has heaps of utility in concert with things like Colicky Dragonettes and, sorry, not Colicky Dragonettes, Quarrelsome Kobolds, which is a weaker minion, so you can actually teleport it around with the Clamor of Harpies when they come into play. You don't have to do the strike, so you can actually teleport a friendly minion to somewhere where your opponent doesn't expect. And if it's a Quarrelsome Kobolds, of course, it can strike an adjacent unit at the end of your turn. So you can use the Clamor of Harpies to reposition your Kobolds to somewhere where you want them. It also allows you to do things like bring your Sacred Scarabs over to a place where they're more dangerous if they happen to be out of position. Or, of course, it can eat one of your opponent's smaller minions, which can be cool as well. So Clamor of Harpies, just a nice one to have in the 4-drop slot. And then we've got the Gaia Hippogriffs and the Petrosian Cavalry, both of which are charge minions, as I said. So they've got the ability to attack for 3 the turn they come in. So at the top of your curve, you can hopefully have 1 or 2 of your 2 or 3 drops out on the board, and then just add these 4 drops for some immediate extra pressure, which will hopefully allow you to get your opponent's life total down to 0. Last piece of tech we've got is for decks that are trying to outclass us in terms of having larger minions. Infiltrate allows us to gain control of target enemy minion until it deals damage, and tap it, it gains stealth. So it's effectively a removal, but it also allows us to use that enemy minion once to have an attack, which can let us finish off the game at death's door or accomplish some other similarly important strategic goal if we are willing to do so and give the minion back to our opponent. So that's pretty much all of the spells covered, I think. Now let's take a look at the sites. So in terms of the sites in this deck, we've actually got pretty simple Atlas, it must be said. We've got 12 deserts, so the full complement of 4 of each of the deserts. We've got 2 Shifting Sands, which allow us to reuse the ability of the Genesis ability of all nearby deserts when we play it, which can be a great way to take out opposing minions, and it's a good reward for playing so many deserts in your deck. We've got 3 copies of Ruins, which is the Air Fire Dual Sight, which lets us fix our threshold a little bit and make sure we can play things like our grapple shots. Then we've got 1 of each of the Fire unique sites. So we've got River of Flame, which can cast our fire spells, so that can both allow us to hit things like root spiders if they happen to be peskily hiding underground, because River of Flame exists in both the above ground and subsurface regions, so it can actually hit burrowed minions with spells, and it's a fire spellcaster, so it can cast any of our fire spells on the deck originating from it. Then we've got Smokestacks of Nyak, which turns off any nearby sites, so it can stop our opponent's power sites from impacting on us. And then we've got Vesuvius, which if we've got 3 fire threshold, we can sacrifice Vesuvius to deal 3 damage to each nearby unit, which includes enemy avatars, for example, as well as minions. So this, a relatively simple Atlas, complements the aggro game plan really well. We get a bit of flexibility for casting our spells, even things like Minor Explosion, which have the proximity requirement, as well as all of our projectiles can originate from our River of Flame as well, which is pretty cool. Vesuvius is another bit of damage and sort of an extra burn spell that we can use to threaten our opponent late in the game, and Shifting Sands can sometimes just let you snipe an enemy minion when it comes into the realm. And Ruins, of course, just supporting that air splash. So pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple on the Atlas side of things, and just adding that little bit of extra utility to our game plan. So thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed today's deck tech on the Flamecaller deck. Do let me know in the comments if you try out a Flamecaller deck, if you've got ideas for your own Flamecaller build that you want to try, and how you go playing this at your local shop. Hope you've enjoyed the series overall. I've been Jesse Muehlman Marshall for The Winning Agenda. If you've enjoyed this content and you want to support the channel on an ongoing basis, we have channel memberships and we've got some giveaways through that program as well. So thanks to all our members for your support. It's been a little bit quieter in the last month or so while we've been putting together all these videos for the beta launch, and I hope that our members really enjoy it, because I know a number of them have commented and had a chat with me about the videos and the content that's coming up on the channel. So thank you, members, for your continued support, but all of you out there as well who are viewing these and maybe discovering the channel for the first time. Hope you've enjoyed the content. Hope you enjoy all the other videos that we've put out, the gameplay and the other deck tech as well, the Wave Shaper deck tech, and of course go and check out Haine's videos at Wizard's Den for his perspective and his deck techs as well. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.